Merci beaucoup tout le monde pour être parmi nous. Thank you everyone for joining us this morning. Today our province and our entire country faces a reality that we haven't seen before. Aujourd'hui, notre province et tout notre pays font face à une nouvelle réalité qu'on n'a jamais vue auparavant. President Trump has officially announced the implementation of a 25% tariff on Canadian exports and 10% on energy. These illegal, unjustified tariffs will have heavy consequences for New Brunswickers, for our businesses, our communities, and our economy. 92% of our exports go to the U.S. These tariffs are an attack on Canada and on who we are, and they mark a turning point for our province and our country. Canada and the U.S. have been good trading partners, good neighbors for a long time. Here in New Brunswick, we know this better than anyone. We share 17 border crossings with Maine, and many New Brunswickers and Mainers alike consider themselves neighbors, cousins. You don't treat your neighbors like this. Quand est venu le temps de répondre aux inquiétudes de la frontière, le Canada a investi 1,3 milliard de dollars, incluant ici au Nouveau-Brunswick, puis on a fait du progrès. De décembre à janvier, le trafic de fentanyl en provenance du Canada aux douanes puis aux frontières américaines a baissé de 97%, rendant nos communautés plus sécuritaires à travers le pays puis ici chez soi. Il n'y a pas d'autre place au monde comme le Nouveau-Brunswick. On a une province de gens travaillants, débrouillards puis résilients. Et je sais qu'ensemble, on va passer à travers de cette tempête. There's nowhere in the world like New Brunswick. We are a province of entrepreneurial, resilient, scrappy people, and we will weather this storm together. I've just met with New Brunswick exporters to share our support package and our action plan, and to assure entrepreneurs in this province that we have their backs. In addition to the measures we've already announced, we've been working hard to develop a plan that includes support for affected New Brunswickers and communities, relief for New Brunswick businesses, including those most impacted by tariffs, such as our forestry sector, fisheries sector, agriculture sector, and manufacturing industries. We've taken concrete steps to knock down interprovincial trade barriers, and we've put in place the tools you need to help you buy New Brunswick-made products. Le Nouveau-Brunswick se laissera pas intimider. On a une province fière et unique, le meilleur au monde avec le meilleur monde et les meilleurs produits. Nous connaissons notre valeur. New Brunswick will not be bullied. We are a unique and proud province with the best people and the best products. We know our value. As soon as Trump began talking about tariffs, we took steps. To date, our government has put a stop to the purchase of any new U.S. products. On a cessé de signer de nouveaux contrats avec des entreprises américaines depuis le 4 février. On a lancé une révision des approvisionnements pour remplacer les produits et les services américains actuellement utilisés par le gouvernement provincial. We have worked to find new markets for U.S. exports like seafood and lumber in partnership with other Atlantic provinces. On a finalisé à travers d'Opportunités Nouveau-Brunswick et le ministère d'Éducation postsecondaire, de la formation et du travail des programmes pour soutenir les travailleurs et les entrepreneurs. Le ministre Randall, vous allez parler de plus, et puis le ministre D'Amours aussi. On a éliminé des barrières commerciales internes. We have tackled internal trade barriers to strengthen our economy in collaboration with our federal and provincial counterparts to make it easier to do business across Canada. This is something Minister D'Amours will be talking to you more about. We have been meeting regularly with New Brunswickers, with export companies, with chambers of commerce to understand their challenges, to incorporate their feedback into our plan. J'ai rejoint le Premier ministre du Canada à Washington, où nous avons rencontré plusieurs sénateurs et membres du Congrès américain, et ils s'entendent tous pour dire que ces tarifs sont mauvaises pour nos deux pays et ils ont commencé à le dénoncer. When push comes to shove, we will do whatever it takes to defend New Brunswickers and our province. Our government is using every tool in our toolbox to protect New Brunswick workers and our economy. Même si la situation est difficile, elle nous offre une occasion unique. Il y a un élan partout au Canada et avec nos nombreux partenaires à travers du monde pour travailler ensemble, pour ouvrir de nouveaux marchés et éliminer les barrières commerciales. C'est notre chance de montrer au Canada et au monde entier tous les produits, les services et les solutions incroyables que le Nouveau-Brunswick a à offrir. We know this is a challenging moment, but it presents an opportunity for New Brunswick. There is momentum across Canada, and with many of our friends around the globe, we can open new markets. We can break down trade barriers. This is our chance to show Canada and the world the incredible products, services, and solutions that New Brunswickers make. New Brunswick, we need you to rally together and to support each other. Just like we've seen you do over this past month. We see you buying more New Brunswick products. We see you changing your habits and changing your plans, all to help each other. And I have every confidence that through these challenging times, we will show our love for New Brunswick and for New Brunswick-made products. New Brunswick is an exceptional neighbor, a great trading partner. We have deep connections here and around the world. We are the only bilingual province in Canada. We are accessible through our ports, our airports, our networks, and our relationships. Now is the time for us to come together. C'est le moment de s'unir comme voisins, comme néo-brunswickois, et avec nos homologues à travers le pays pour défendre notre province et notre pays avec force. Now is the time to come together as never before, as neighbors, as New Brunswickers, and with our counterparts across the country, to stand strong and free for our province and our country. Merci. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Luke Randall. I'm the Minister responsible for Opportunities New Brunswick, ONB. A critical part of our tariff response plan is dedicated to supporting New Brunswick businesses. We recognize that this support is needed today in response to tariffs into the future as we build a strong, sustainable economy. I want to reinforce that New Brunswick is open for business, and our government is here to help businesses impacted by tariffs. We are pleased to announce today a competitive growth program through Opportunities New Brunswick to enhance the long-term sustainability of New Brunswick export-intensive companies. We are investing $40 million to support large companies with addressing competitiveness gaps, stabilizing operations, and protecting jobs. It will also be available to companies that are making strategic investments in projects that foster growth through productivity and market diversification. Through the Competitiveness and Growth Program, we expect to generate short-term stability, long-term competitiveness, and economic resilience for New Brunswick businesses. ONB has also adjusted its existing programs to ensure that businesses and sectors directly impacted by tariffs have the access to financial support to maintain and grow their operations in our province. Working capital loans will offer financial support of up to $5 million to companies in tariff-impacted sectors to help maintain their operations. The program will be managed by ONB through its existing $50 million loan budget. ONB will also leverage $30 million financial policies to ensure that they are responsive to current challenges to help mitigate the impact of tariffs, support contingency planning, market diversification, and productivity improvements. We know there remains a lot of uncertainty in New Brunswick, across Canada and globally. But I'm here to tell you that we are ready and we have your back, New Brunswick. I also want to thank the hundreds of businesses that have given us input as we've framed up these programs, who have also involved themselves in our calls and our webinar series. Without them, we could not have framed up these programs. If you have questions about tariff-related support or general business-related matters, I encourage you to leverage O&B Business Navigators. Remember, it is critical that we continue to support our local businesses and entrepreneurs. You can help by choosing New Brunswick and Canadian products wherever possible. Thank you, New Brunswick.
Bonjour, hello everyone. Thank you all for joining us today, and a big thank you to the Premier and my cabinet colleagues. The threat of U.S. tariffs on Canadian exports to the United States has raised public consciousness in Canada regarding opportunities to support Canadian businesses and workers by purchasing more Canadian products. One of the ways to address this threat is for federal, provincial, and territorial to work toward reducing barriers to internal trade and to improve labor mobility within Canada. Les provinces et les territoires canadiens sont conscients qu'il est plus important que jamais d'alléger, voire de supprimer certaines politiques qui compliquent parfois la vente de produits et services canadiens à l'extérieur de leur région d'origine. Vendredi dernier, le 28 février, en ma qualité de ministre des Affaires intergouvernementales, j'ai pris part à une réunion du Comité du commerce intérieur à Toronto en compagnie d'autres ministres responsables du commerce intérieur. Nous poursuivons nos discussions relatives à la réduction des barrières commerciales intérieures au Canada et continuons à faire le point sur les recommandations au Premier ministre. Les ministres ont tous démontré qu'il était prêt à prendre des mesures énergétiques pour faciliter les affaires au Canada et développer l'économie nationale. Our message was that New Brunswick is ready to take a leadership role in reducing interprovincial trade barriers within Canada by working to reduce regulatory and administrative burden between the provinces and territories. We announced that after an ambitious review of our party-specific exceptions to the Canadian Free Trade Agreement, CFTA, New Brunswick is ready to remove 9 and narrow the scope of 1 and ready to remove another 6 that represent more than 50% of our exemptions. These exceptions are mostly related to the area of procurement. Nous avons annoncé qu'après un examen ambitieux de nos exemptions propres aux parties dans l'accord de libre-échange canadien ALEC, le Nouveau-Brunswick était disposé à en supprimer 9 et à limiter la portée de l'une d'entre elles, et nous étions prêts à en supprimer 6 autres, ce qui représente plus de 50% de nos exemptions. Ces exemptions concernent principalement le domaine de l'approvisionnement. We also express our agreement to see a unified approach on labor mobility. The government of New Brunswick believes that a more unified approach to labor mobility and a reduction in barriers would help workers transition more seamlessly. Inconsistent recognitions of credentials between provinces continues to be a challenge. New Brunswick is looking at automatically recognizing certified workers from another jurisdiction for a minimum of 120 days, allowing them to work while obtaining any necessary provincial credentials. Le Nouveau-Brunswick envisage de reconnaître automatiquement les travailleurs accrédités auprès d'une autre administration pour une période de 120 jours, leur permettant ainsi de travailler tout en tâchant d'obtenir les titres de compétences nécessaires dans la province. We also shared that New Brunswick is open to participating in a direct-to-consumer sales of alcohol and eliminating personal exemption limits for alcohol, reducing regulatory and administration burden for truckers and take part of mutual recognition on goods, and finally, taking part in enhancement of the trade promotion approach of Team Canada. By actively taking part in pan-Canadian efforts to facilitate stronger internal trade, we are strengthening our province and Canada's economy by allowing for businesses right here at home to grow and create jobs within Canada. Notre gouvernement est prêt à faire ce qu'il faut pour aider les entreprises à rester concurrentielles et à poursuivre leur croissance. Nous nous engageons également aux côtés de nos organismes de réglementation et parties prenantes à réduire les barrières au commerce, et à la mobilité de la main-d'œuvre au Canada. Our government is ready to do what it takes to support businesses, to stay competitive and continue to grow. We will also engage with our regulatory bodies and stakeholders in reducing barriers to trade and labor mobility within Canada. Whether or not additional tariffs come into effect, we need to think about our long-term success as a province and a country, and that means having more free trade within Canada. Merci à vous tous.
Bonjour, hello to everyone. I want to first thank our Premier Holt and her team for the hard work that they have done in the past couple of months to prepare our province and our country for this day, a day that we hoped would never arrive, but we are ready. The Department of Agriculture and Aquaculture and Fisheries has had a strong buy local strategy in place since 2016. Now more than ever, it is vital to make sure that New Brunswickers know where to find information on buying and supporting local. The New Brunswick seafood and agri-food industries are a cornerstone of New Brunswick's economy, exporting $2.75 billion in product last year. As most people know, the United States is our top market, with 81% of our seafood and 85% of our agri-food exports going south of the border. Nous communiquons régulièrement avec nos secteurs et nous comprenons les pressions financières importantes auxquelles ils sont confrontés. Notre priorité est de les soutenir et soutenir les travailleurs concernés, affectés. I know the uncertainty that this is causing. Having spent most of my life as a food producer, I understand the stress of not knowing what's ahead. But I want our farming and fishing sectors to know that we hear you, we are working on your behalf. Ce problème ne concerne pas seulement les exportations, mais l'ensemble de notre système de production alimentaire. Car non seulement nous vendons nos produits aux États-Unis, mais nous dépendons également d'eux pour des intrants clés qui soutiennent nos industries de culture et de récolte et transformation. Alors, il est essentiel de soutenir nos secteurs aujourd'hui pour garantir la sécurité alimentaire et l'autosuffisance à long terme. Beyond the immediate crisis, we need to strengthen our resilience of our industries. That means diversifying markets, investing in productivity, and breaking down interprovincial barriers, trade barriers, particularly impacting our seafood sector. I would also like to emphasize one key step would be an immediate renewal of the Federal Provincial Atlantic Fisheries Fund agreement to support innovation and competitiveness in our seafood sector. Au fur et à mesure que de nouveaux défis se présenteront, nous continuerons de chercher des solutions stratégiques en collaboration avec nos partenaires dans le cadre de l'approche Équipe Nouveau-Brunswick et Équipe Canada. Now, more than ever, it is critical to support local food products. Every dollar spent on New Brunswick grown and made products strengthens our economy, supports local jobs, and keeps our food system resilient. Nous mettons aussi à la disposition des Nouveaux-Brunswickois une série de ressources pour vous aider à faire le choix en matière d'alimentation locale, car les avantages de l'alimentation locale vont bien au-delà de votre assiette. Voici quelques mesures qui peuvent être prises pour assurer que l'on supporte les produits alimentaires locaux. Nous avons le site exploreatlocalnewbrunswick.ca, Manger local ici, which provides a local availability guide, a calendar of food events, local for good videos showcasing local producers, and link to a New Brunswick farmers market map, just to name a few. So shop direct, achetez en direct, faites vos achats directement dans les programmes d'agriculture soutenus comme les ASC ou les CSA Basket, les marchés du fermier, les kiosques de ferme et les marchés de poissons, et aussi les salles de dégustation et les magasins spécialisés. Look for the Savor New Brunswick logo, a simple way to identify New Brunswick-made product in grocery stores. This initiative helps showcase and promote our province's food and beverage industry. Our department is committed to supporting our local growers and producers in every way we can. the Made in New Brunswick, Buy Local Good for Good websites will help guide you to the best of what New Brunswick has to offer. It might mean that you might have to switch your orange juice to apple juice in the morning, or cranberry juice, even if it starts. So those are some of the small examples and adjustments that we may have to make. So we will get through this together. I firmly believe that we will come out of it stronger. Merci, thank you.
I'd like to thank all our podium speakers. Je tiens à remercier tous nos conférenciers. We will now proceed with questions from members of the media. Each reporter will have one question and a quick follow-up. You have the right to pose your question in the official language of your choice. Just to let you know, I will be alternating between members of the media who are present in the room and online. Nous allons maintenant procéder aux questions des journalistes. Chaque journaliste a droit à une question et un suivi très, très rapide. Vous avez le droit de poser vos questions dans la langue de votre choix. Pour votre information, je vais alterner entre les membres des médias qui sont présents ici dans la salle et ceux qui sont en ligne. Jacques Poitras, CBC.
Good morning. There's been some other measures talked about that I'm not hearing from you, such as Doug Ford cutting off electricity to the U.S., Northern Maine relies on NB Power's electricity, or requiring Vescor to divest its investments in certain U.S. companies like Tesla. So are those in the toolbox as well, and why aren't you doing those right off the top?
Thanks for the question, Jacques. Certainly everything is on the table. Our response today is our first step. And as things unroll, as we work to eliminate the tariffs and ensure that they are very short-lived, we will look at other steps like the ones that you mentioned. Our neighbors in Maine are our friends, and we want to put serious consideration into the decisions that might hurt some of the people that have already spoken up against the tariffs that the president has illegally enacted. But we are considering the options that you've laid out, and they may be on the table. They are on the table now. They may be implemented in the future.
Follow-up. On internal trade, I heard a lot of discussing, looking at, prepared to. How many of these measures are unilateral? How many of them are going to require all 13 provinces and territories to agree to them? And if that's the case, how long is that really going to take to sort of?
So New Brunswick's removal of procurement exceptions is unilateral. It's something we are doing and requires no reciprocity. On labor mobility, that is also something that we are advancing, but we are going to be pushing for every province to do that and to recognize the certifications that New Brunswickers hold. But we can advance labor mobility in our province by recognizing credentials across the country on our own, and our cabinet has already approved, I think we're the only government in the country that is at this point, but has already approved the removal of those exemptions.
Alex Villeneuve, Radio-Canada.
Oui. Les mesures de représailles, j'aimerais quand même vous entendre là-dessus. Ça fait des semaines qu'on dit tout est sur la table, qu'il faut prendre le Canada au sérieux, le Nouveau-Brunswick au sérieux, mais j'en ai pas entendu des nouvelles nécessairement aujourd'hui. Pourquoi est-ce qu'on ne va pas plus, en ce jour critique, on ne va pas plus loin du côté des représailles?
Le gouvernement fédéral va annoncer les mesures de représailles, je pense, dans une demi-heure. Ils ont une solution de 155 milliards de dollars de mesures de représailles, puis ça inclut Nouveau-Brunswick qui va être un parti de cette équipe.
Vous auriez pu le faire de votre côté.
Pardon?
Vous auriez pu le faire de votre côté, couper l'électricité ou menacer de couper l'électricité ou les tarifs sur l'aluminium que Legault considère.
Oui, on participe avec l'équipe du Canada, avec les tarifs du représailles. Ils n'ont pas de solution unique au Nouveau-Brunswick à ce moment.
Rapidement, quand même, il y a une frustration puis une trahison qui est sentie sur la place publique au Canada. Vous, la partagez-vous?
Oui. Nous sommes vraiment frustrés. Ils sont nos voisins, ils étaient nos meilleurs amis, puis maintenant, ils attaquent le Canada. Nous ne sommes pas d'accord avec ça. Nous allons nous battre pour Nouveau-Brunswick et nous allons utiliser nos amis de tout le monde entier pour démontrer que les produits du Nouveau-Brunswick sont les meilleurs. Ils ont besoin de nous autres, mais nous autres, on va réussir dans cette bataille avec tout le Canada puis nos amis autour du monde. Je m'excuse.
On va aller en ligne. We'll now go online. Alexandre Boudreau, Acadie Nouvelle, peux-tu désactiver le son de vos micros sur votre ordi, s'il vous plaît?
Bonjour, est-ce que vous m'entendez bien?
Très bien.
Ma question est pour M. D'Amours. Vous avez parlé des exemptions au commerce interprovincial qui ont été enlevées, mais j'aimerais mieux comprendre l'impact de ce que vous avez fait ou de ce que vous allez faire. Pouvez-vous me donner des exemples concrets des barrières que vous allez enlever? Puis, par exemple, est-ce que les Néo-Brunswickois vont voir des produits d'autres provinces sur leurs étagères? Ou est-ce que vous pouvez donner un exemple, par exemple, de l'industrie qui bénéficie du fait que vous avez abattu ou vous allez aller abattre certaines barrières commerciales? S'il vous plaît.
Bien, merci pour la question. Et puis, certainement, l'objectif que nous avons pris la semaine dernière au comité du commerce intérieur, c'était de s'assurer de pouvoir ouvrir les portes du marché du Nouveau-Brunswick, principalement au niveau de l'approvisionnement. Et puis, c'est l'objectif de l'ensemble des provinces à travers le pays, des provinces et territoires. Donc, vous comprendrez que ça, c'est... Nous, on est arrivé avec une série de mesures. On a présenté au comité 9 exemptions qui seront retirées, une qui sera ajustée avec certaines provinces où est-ce qu'on a des discussions actuellement pour les retirer, et 6 autres mesures qui pourront être retirées dans un avenir après discussion. L'objectif ultime, c'est de s'assurer que l'approvisionnement puisse se faire le plus facilement entre les différentes provinces et territoires. Et puis aussi, sur l'autre aspect, c'est la question de la mobilité de la main-d'œuvre. On se comprend qu'un professionnel qui a déjà sa certification dans une autre province doit pouvoir arriver au Nouveau-Brunswick et travailler. Et puis, à ce niveau-là, je dois vous dire que notre présentation d'arriver avec les 120 premiers jours de travail directement au Nouveau-Brunswick, c'est unique. Et puis, j'espère que l'ensemble des provinces et territoires vont prendre cet exemple pour s'assurer qu'on puisse vraiment arriver avec une mobilité de la main-d'œuvre importante à travers le pays, et puis qu'on puisse aussi s'assurer qu'on puisse avoir une libre circulation de nos biens et de nos services.
Votre suivi, M. Boudreau?
Madame Holt, à quelle fréquence est-ce qu'on va annoncer des nouvelles mesures de représailles? Comme est-ce que ça sera de la semaine prochaine si les tarifs durent encore? Est-ce que c'est uniquement Ottawa qui va annoncer ces mesures de représailles-là, ou est-ce que le Nouveau-Brunswick va aussi en faire?
À ce point, on va regarder qu'est-ce qui arrive dans les prochaines 3 semaines avec les mesures de représailles qu'on a mises en place, l'enlève de tous les produits d'alcool du Nouveau-Brunswick. Je m'excuse. L'arrêt des achats des produits des États-Unis par le gouvernement de Nouveau-Brunswick, le remplacement de produits de l'États-Unis qu'on achète au moment. Après les prochaines 3 semaines, on va avoir une nouvelle initiative de représailles. Puis là, on va savoir si on réussit à avancer le dossier avec les États-Unis. Et s'il y a plus de choses qu'on doit faire pour démontrer combien ils ont besoin de nous autres et l'impact spécifique sur l'économie américaine.
Andrew Waugh, Post Media.
Premier, I know we spoke the other day about the impact of these tariffs on your political agenda. Well, last week we were having a theoretical discussion. Now we're having the discussion. Talk me through about how you try to balance what you think needs to be done in order to keep the economy going versus all these promises that you've made and the push and pull that is going to happen there.
That is the challenge of governing, is finding the right balance that is in the best interest of New Brunswickers today and for the future. So we have been wrestling with how we support our entrepreneurs, how we ensure that we have a vibrant and active economy that presents the kind of good-paying jobs that New Brunswickers can have to pay the bills and have a good quality of life. We know that New Brunswickers need better access to their healthcare systems. They need a strong education system for their kids and their future. They need affordable places to call home, and they want to see an environment that is well protected. And so we have to balance how we stimulate our economy in the face of a challenge that we have never seen before. Right now is not the time for austerity. Now is the time to get behind New Brunswick businesses and entrepreneurs, get behind New Brunswick workers, and show them that we have got their back. We are going to protect that economic activity in New Brunswick that will help us in the long term continue to make the investments that we're making in the healthcare system and getting more New Brunswickers access to the care they need. So there's a real balance here. We've been engaging with economists, we've been engaging with stakeholders to try to find what is the best way way forward that is fiscally responsible, but that addresses New Brunswickers' needs today and sets us up to deliver to those needs tomorrow.
Follow up?
So, okay, that all sounds great. It also sounds super expensive. So what should we be looking at? Like, what should New Brunswickers be looking at in terms of the budget? Like, is the deficit going to be, like, we had the 400 million from a starting position. Where are we going to land on all this? Like, because it sounds costly.
Yeah, the budget is going to be tabled on March 18th, and the team is working to finalize it now. Obviously, you've heard us describe a significant support package for New Brunswick workers and for New Brunswick entrepreneurs and communities, because we need to make sure that we can get through this tariff fight, however short-lived, and come out strong and resilient on the other side. We've got to make sure there's an economy here to support the delivery of healthcare services and education services. So we are continuing to work very hard on the budget. We are trying to manage it while not kicking the can down the road. We have seen too many governments kick the can down the road and not enact the kind of transformational change that we need. We can't continue with the status quo. The status quo in our healthcare system is not going to work. The status quo in our education system is not going to work. The status quo in our economy is not going to work. We have to do things differently, and we have to change those tires while we're driving the bus. So it is a challenge, no question. We are approaching it with a focus on balance and making sure that New Brunswickers can have what they need, have the jobs they need to pay the bills, have the roof over their head that is affordable and safe, and have access to the health care that they and their loved ones need, all doing so in a way that we can manage in a fiscally responsible way over the long term.
Nick Moore, CTV.
Good morning. On the list of retaliatory tariffs that we'll expect to see today, what on that list came from you in terms of what New Brunswick could offer, as you said, to inflict the most pain?
There is a long list of tariffs that make up our retaliatory tariffs that I think has been published and publicly available. There's a number of specific things that, we've already taken off the shelves. You're not going to find Kentucky bourbon at the NB liquor stores, and you haven't for about a month now. And we've seen what that means for how New Brunswickers are choosing New Brunswick-made products because we have excellent spirits and other beverages that we make in this province. We're going to see impacts on things like furniture, non-essential items, because New Brunswick has excellent furniture makers, cabinet makers, and others, and so we can replace those products. Folks here can buy from places like Monsieur Tamat, greenhouse-grown tomatoes and cucumbers that are some of the best you'll find anywhere. And so we've put retaliatory tariffs on the things that New Brunswickers produce and that we don't need to bring in American products to meet New Brunswickers' demand.
And how much interaction are you expecting between yourself, your provincial colleagues, the federal government? Will this be a daily meeting that you'll be having, or how much contact, now that we're into this, are you expecting?
Yeah, it's a good question, Nick. We've been meeting weekly right now, as well as with considerable exchanges in between those Wednesday afternoon meetings. We have one today at 3 o'clock with the First Ministers to connect on this subject. And then my counterparts have been having very regular meetings on internal trade. We expect the federal government to communicate their support package to New Brunswick workers and Canadian workers. And we expect to continue that conversation. So at a minimum, on a weekly basis, we will be connecting with our federal counterparts and other premiers.
Thank you both. We're going to go back online. Sarah from Canadian Press, can you unmute your microphone and ask your question, please?
Hi there. You mentioned federal government support package. Can you tell me what are you hoping will be in there?
Hi, Sarah. Thanks. We are expecting the federal government to provide capital measures to ensure that businesses have the working capital they need, similar to the package my colleague, Minister Randall, described. We're expecting supports to workers by changing the terms of EI. So we want to see a waiting period waived. We want to see enhancements to the EI program for folks impacted by tariffs so that they can get access to that income support quickly. And I think that there's a job sharing plan plan that's going to get changed. We're also looking for further supports for the kind of changes that New Brunswick businesses will need to make to access new markets and to move our goods instead of by train across the border with Maine where $12 billion goods pass, instead onto a shipping container and out the Port of St. John or the Port of Baldoon to reach customers in Europe or Africa or beyond. And so we're looking for infrastructure supports for market diversification, supports for workers through income and retraining, and capital supports for businesses.
Sarah, do you have a follow-up?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Anna Madden from Global.
I know you've talked about the upcoming budget, but how much in total will these measures cost, and which budget are they coming out this year for the upcoming one?
The package that my colleagues have described totals about $162 million of support, and we have put that into next year's budget as conditional, so the programs are there to be used if needed for tariff-impacted sectors.
Follow-up?
I know there's talk about exploring new markets. What new markets are those, and how long do you see that taking?
Well, we've been working on exploring new markets for quite a bit of time, but I've never seen both more uptake or more energy behind the work. So we were just host to leaders from Finland, Norway, Denmark, and Sweden, where we have lots of opportunity to engage on seafood, on forestry, on cybersecurity, and other things. The Canada-European Trade Agreement that was signed back in 2016-17, I think, hasn't realized its full potential, and so there are lots of opportunities in Europe as Europeans wonder what tariffs are going to hit to them. They are keen to partner with strong and democratic nations like Canada to ensure that those values and those relationships are both economic and social. We're looking at markets in Asia, where that's the ultimate destination for much of New Brunswick seafood now, and we think that we can get direct to those markets on our own rather than using partners through the U.S. And then the African market has been changing dramatically, and so we look at what's happening in Africa and India and the Middle East, and we see demand for the kind of products that New Brunswickers make. They're very interested in our food products, our energy products, and some of our solutions. So really, the world is our oyster. The Europeans are ready with an existing trade agreement, and we have close access to them through our port infrastructure. But we have New Brunswick businesses doing business all around the world, and we're going to put in place even more supports to get them there, because their motivation to do so, when your easiest trading partner has now become your most difficult trading partner, the motivation is there to move and find those new customers. We provide a number of supports to businesses that are looking to diversify, and my colleague might be able to speak more to it, but we support their sales and marketing efforts. So as they send a salesperson over to a new market, then we can help offset the costs of that investment. As they stick their neck out to find new customers, we can help de-risk that. We have expertise in the team who can share information on regulatory barriers, the differences in doing business in other countries, because that knowledge exists in-house, and Opportunities New Brunswick shares it freely. We leverage the Canadian embassy structure where we know the products that other countries want to buy. Then we can tee up group delivery and line up the logistics so that as many New Brunswick businesses want to go into that market, we can make it less expensive for them to do so by aligning the logistics costs to get into that marketplace. And then we can leverage the trade agreement that exists now that makes sure that there's free flow of trade and help them get their goods into our friends' hands.
Alexander Johnson from All New Brunswick. Can you unmute your mic and ask your question, please?
Good morning. I wanted to ask about the competitive growth plan fund specifically. My understanding is that is meant for larger companies. What can that money be spent on? Is that meant to just subsidize operations to keep things going, or is that going into investments to make businesses more competitive?
So it is intended to go into long-term competitiveness programs, but also bring short-term stability. So both. ONB has an existing assessment process. We certainly will be engaging that to make sure we're investing in long-term strategies to help businesses in the long term. I mean, right now, there's a great deal of uncertainty. We're all feeling it. Business leaders are no exception. So this fund is there to help support them in terms of building their strengths, building New Brunswick's overall economic strength, and bringing long-term competitiveness. So a little bit of both.
Alexander, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on some numbers when we were first having this conversation, either in early February or January. At the time, Premier, you said that these tariffs could cost New Brunswick between 4,000 and 6,000 jobs. What is that looking like today as far as potential job loss in the province?
Well, that's still the best forecast that we have, Alexander, that 4,000 to 6,000 range. We know that there's more than 35,000 jobs that are attached to our U.S. economic activity, but we don't expect that to go to zero today. The implementation of these tariffs doesn't mean that all purchasing stops. It just means that our competitive position with the U.S. is diminished, which may cause a reduction in revenue for businesses and the need to implement layoffs. So we're still estimating right now around 6,000 jobs that are at risk, and we will see how quickly the buying behaviors change. We know that the U.S. depends on our petroleum exports, our wood exports, our agriculture exports, and they don't have easy replacements for those things. If you're in Boston or if you're in Maine, your choice of where to get gas or how to heat your home, you don't have 10 different suppliers out there. And so the customers will continue to be there, and we're going to see and be ready to support any New Brunswicker whose job is impacted by these tariffs.
Thank you both. Vicky Hogarth, CHO TV.
Thank you, Bruce. Premier Holt, this weekend, the mayor of Campobello transported 2 photographers to the island to help islanders update or get passports because of tightened borders, and even getting day-to-day supplies to the island is becoming increasingly more complicated. What's the latest update from the province on what you're doing to protect islanders who don't have a year-round ferry to date?
Thank you for the question, Vicky, because the people in Campobello are in a particularly challenging situation, and I thought the mayor's initiative to help people get passports was an excellent one, because we know that the ferry that currently operates from Deer Island is not available every day. It's not available when islanders need it, so we have to come up with the kind of access to New Brunswick that Campobello needs in order to meet their requirements as a part of New Brunswick. We can't get a new ferry there tomorrow. That's unfortunately not the speed of our response, but we were working with the mayor. The mayor was on a call that we held with border communities to articulate the issues, to flag the kind of supports available to him and to the other mayors along the border, and so those conversations and that collaboration is continuing.
A follow-up, Ms. Hogarth?
Thank you. And on that topic of border towns, in what ways do you anticipate New Brunswick's border towns will be uniquely affected by these tariffs? What were those conversations like with local leaders? What are their concerns?
At the time when we last talked with the mayors of the border communities, we were talking significantly about security, wondering about outmigration from the U.S. as more and more people were being pushed and deported, and whether that was impacting our communities. We were talking about the additional surveillance and monitoring that New Brunswick and the Canadian government had put on the border, the impact of the Blackhawks that some community members were seeing, of the drones, and of the additional monitoring we were doing, the need for additional personnel at a time when the U.S. was reducing their presence and their hours at border facilities. And so that was the main discussion at that point in time. But now we're looking at what might be the economic impacts, because we have a number of communities, Edmundston being one, clearly St. Stephen and others, where the economic ties are significant, where people move across the border to buy and shop, where pulp moves through a pipe from one side of the mill over to the other, that will have significant impacts on the economies of those communities, which is why we included a community support piece in the package that we described today, supported through RDC.
Thank you. Alex Delcourt, CHIU TV. Teresa Blackburn, River Valley Sun, please unmute your mic and ask your question. Silas Brown, CBC.
I'm going to return to tariffs in a moment here, but are you able to confirm the reporting in the Globe and Mail this morning that Vitalite has canceled the remaining shifts of nurses employed through the CHL contract?
Yes.
Follow-up. Firstly, do you have anything to say on that, about that decision?
Well, we know that the CHL contract has been a source of frustration, cost, and an issue for New Brunswickers and an issue for our nurses who watched folks come into our province, get paid significantly more than them, and see some of them lose shifts and lose opportunities. So we are glad to be getting out of that contract and focusing on New Brunswick nurses who we need to retain and support for the long-term health of our healthcare system. So Vitalite has been taking aggressive action to get us out of a bad contract.
I see up there, it says tariffs, our action plan supporting people impacted by job loss. I didn't hear any of you speak about direct support for people during your first go-around there, and then it wasn't until you were asked about EI supports that it came up. So what is the province doing? Is that just going to be part of the federal action plan, or is the province also going to be involved in that job loss piece?
The Department of Post-Secondary Education, Training and Labour has $33 million put aside through Working NB to provide supports to New Brunswickers as they look to retrain, as they look to manage their way through a temporary shutdown of their business. And so they provide consultation, connection, access to retraining funds, and access to income support. So that's through the Department of Post-Secondary Education and Labour. I have the minister here with me, actually, if you want to add on.
Yeah, exactly. You know, the 33 million will help, you know, those who may lose their job for, you know, sometime for a few months. So we'll see. Hopefully it will be for only a few weeks if this happens. So we will work with our local Working NB offices to make sure that we can assist each and every one that are in need in the province.
Is that just the normal Working NB budget, or has that been boosted as part of this response?
This is part of the package for this actual situation, 33 million.
Additional money.
It's a reprofiling of the existing Working NB budget.
Reprofiling of the, sorry, I'm going to get in trouble if I keep asking questions.
Pascal Rochnog, Radio-Canada. Peux-tu désactiver vos micros? Monsieur Rachnog, peux-tu désactiver vos micros? Adam Heuris, Post Media. Please.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thanks.
You gave the figure of $162 million total for the tariff action plan. You know, I was trying to do the math here. There's 40 million, another 33 million. Could you give us a rough breakdown of how we get to 162 million, and if all of that is new money and not repurposed money?
Yeah, we can send you the breakdown. I think if my memory serves, we've got $50 million accessible in working capital loans, $30 million through ONB's investment budget, $40 million in the competitiveness fund, $33 million in post-secondary education, training and labor, $4 million with the fisheries fund, and I think $5 million with RDC for community supports. Was somebody adding that up? Did that get there?
Pretty close. My math's not that quick, so. Follow up, you also announced removal of several interprovincial trade barriers and what appeared to be the end of the long-held limit on the import of alcohol from another province for personal consumption. Is that effective now? And have you done any kind of impact study on what that means for NB Liquor revenues?
There's two elements. The first one, it's direct to consumer, and I need to mention that both of them will need a new legislation modification. So the first one is a direct to consumer. So we indicated to the Committee of Internal Trade that New Brunswick is interested to be part of this program. It's not all the provinces that have accepted to join, but we have announced that we will join this direct to consumer. This will help some of our business in New Brunswick to be able to sell in other provinces and territories. On the personal limit elimination, this is something that I think it's an ongoing discussion for years and years, and it's at the point that we want to make sure that we open real discussion, that we want to have a very good interprovincial sales of goods and service. So this is another element that we show that New Brunswick was a real leader within the Confederation.
Merci beaucoup.
So just
Premier?
it's going to happen, but you just need legislation first.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hurst. Premier, closing words.
Thanks, everybody, for being here. I want to thank New Brunswickers who have come out in full support of their colleagues, their neighbors, their entrepreneurs who have been buying New Brunswick Made like never before, who have canceled plans to cross the border and who are going to be vacationing and spending their time and energy in our beautiful province. I want to invite members of Nova Scotia, PEI, Newfoundland, Quebec, Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, British Columbia, the Northwest Territories, the Yukon and Nunavut to come to New Brunswick and to see what a unique and special place we are as we all look to support each other as Team Canada through this. New Brunswickers are resilient. We are great neighbors. We look after each other, and we have the resources and the people that will see us through this storm. We are going to get through it. It is going to be tough. It is going to cost money, but I want New Brunswickers to know that your government is here. We've got your back as workers and entrepreneurs. We will do what it takes to protect our economy and to ensure we come out the other side of this storm stronger and more resilient, as I know New Brunswickers are. Je veux remercier tout le monde, tous les Néo-Brunswickois et Néo-Brunswickoises pour leur activité de la dernière mois, de tous leurs achats de produits qui ont été créés ici à Nouveau-Brunswick. On vous voit que vous achetez plus que jamais les produits d'ici et que vous changez vos plans et vos habitudes parce que nous sommes des bons voisins. Nous sommes une province de travailleurs résilientes et on va vraiment réussir après la peine. Ça va être difficile, ça va coûter. Mais je sais qu'on va continuer d'être qui nous sommes, des personnes qui travaillent fort, qui prennent soin de leurs voisins, qui sont résilients. On va trouver nos amis autour du monde. On va faire de nouveaux partenariats et on va réussir à être plus fort de l'autre côté de cet enjeu, ensemble, comme notre province unique. We have friends all over the world. We are going to get through this, leveraging them and our Canadian neighbors to realize the potential of New Brunswick to be the strong and resilient and free place that it is among Canada and in the world. Thank you. Merci.